All right, brilliant. It has just gone at 9 a.m. here in the UK, 4 p.m. for our panelists in Hong Kong. And I would like to say a huge hello and welcome to everyone joining us for this Hong Kong FinTech Week 2020 Global Roadshow. Today, we are focusing on the Middle East and India. This is actually the final roadshow in our global series. Over the last 4 weeks, we have hit Asia Pacific, Australia, New Zealand, Greater China, Europe and Africa, and the Americas. So it truly has been a whirlwind global event, and wherever you are joining us from in the world today, a big thank you for being here. My name is Hannah. I'm the head of FinTech Enterprise at FinAsia. I will be your host and panel moderator for today. I'm really excited for the session we have coming up for you today. We're going to be getting our panelists' insights on their global growth strategies they've used, looking at the importance of partnerships, building trust with customers, and some of the impacts of COVID-19 on the FinTech industry. But before we get into all of that, I would first like to invite Mr. Charles Leung, Associate Director General of Investment Promotion at Invest Hong Kong, to kick off this roadshow for us, to give us some welcoming words, and to set the scene a little bit by giving us an overview of the FinTech landscape in Hong Kong. So Charles, thank you so much for being here, and over to you.
Thank you, Hannah. Good morning, good afternoon to everybody. Welcome to this great panel, great discussion that we're going to be having on the Hong Kong FinTech ecosystem and also the Hong Kong FinTech Week coming up in November. We're really excited about this initiative. It's going to go 100% virtual this time, and it will be fantastic for all of you to join during the FinTech Week. And now we all understand that the world has been hit by unprecedented crisis with the COVID situation and all the geopolitical forces and so on. But out of all the negative environment, and unfortunately, we always see there is silver lining and there are opportunities. And having talked to a lot of companies, FinTech and others from around the world, we know that everybody's looking for opportunities to grow, opportunities to invest in or getting investment from, as well as opportunities to collaborate and synergize. And the Hong Kong FinTech Week is one of the best program that you could get to potentially do that with the stakeholders. We are very excited in Hong Kong to do this FinTech Week edition. This is our fifth anniversary FinTech Week that we're going to be doing. And this year, we're going to go 100% virtual. Our FinTech ecosystem has grown tremendously from where we were 5 years ago, with 100 plus startup FinTech companies. And now we have over 600 FinTech companies in the ecosystem. 76% of the companies are from B2B market, which is representing a tremendous opportunity for those of you who are looking at B2B market. Hong Kong, as you know, has over 660 plus banks, 8 virtual banks, 160 plus insurance companies, and 4 virtual insurance companies, and also one of the largest market cap in terms of IPO as well, and in terms of market capitalization, as well as asset management, over 1.6 trillion US dollars. So there's a lot of Hong Kong as a global financial center is a very vibrant ecosystem that we're having here and ready to embrace a lot of the technologies that you in your geographic markets have to offer. Of course, there's a very interesting thing which is happening in the Hong Kong Asia region is the Greater Bay Area. You're going to be hearing a lot more about that. Basically, it's an area which is just north of Hong Kong. It's within 1 hour. You can reach actually 71 million people with an economy GDP would be equivalent to that of 1.6 trillion US dollars, bigger than Korea and Australia as an economy. So this is our kind of neighborhood, and this is where we believe has a lot of opportunities for you to tap into as you look forward to expanding your business, finding new marketplaces, finding new businesses, and also finding new investors. The whole FinTech Week, as my colleagues will explain to you, and the panel will talk about, is about engagement. It's about really how the FinTech companies who have a solution can then re-engage with the banks, insurance companies, asset management, and people in the capital markets here in Hong Kong as a global financial center, but also with other companies in other sectors as well, because FinTech is not just financial services. We've got tech fin companies or FinTech companies that are really looking at expanding their businesses using Hong Kong as a platform. So with that, I'd like to invite you to be part of this. We are really you're going to be hearing a lot of exciting announcements during the week. And we are really at the verge of that convergence of technology, where we're seeing, the whole integration of AI, robotics, and so on and so forth, with the integration of what's happening in the development of FinTech. It is a really, truly exciting ecosystem you don't want to miss. And with that, you're going to hear it more from the panelists today. And I'd like, just before finishing, to thank our members of the panelists and all the champions who have supported us to make this happen. Without them, AMTD, Calvin Choi will be there, Mushir from FinTechHK, as well as my dear colleague from Hong Kong Exchange, Luca, who will be speaking at the panel. And of course, the head of our FinTech team, King Leung, will be sharing their insight about the exciting development that is happening here. So we look forward to seeing you during the November Hong Kong FinTech Week. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Charles. I think that's given everyone a really solid foundation of what's going on in the Hong Kong FinTech ecosystem at the moment. And I would like to build on what Charles has said and give everyone here an exciting sneak peek of what we have coming up for you at FinTech Week this year. So as Charles mentioned, Hong Kong FinTech Week is going fully virtual this year. We are bringing you all the content, the networking, and the business opportunities that you're used to at our physical conference. You can access it right from the comfort of your own home. What does that mean for FinTech Week in terms of numbers then? Well, with everyone logging on from every corner of the globe, we're expecting more than 25,000 attendees, listening to over 350 speakers across 3 days of content. Joining us from more than 70 economies around the world. We'll have over 300 FinTech exhibitors online, and we're expecting more than 4,000 meetings to take place using our virtual matchmaking app. Now, Hong Kong FinTech Week is famous for the focus that we put on our content, and this year is absolutely no different. We will be bringing you the best-in-class speakers from FinTech around the globe, the founders and the CEOs that you want to hear from, sharing their insights on our virtual stages. And what will we be talking about? Well, we'll be looking at the rise of tech fin in China. What are the huge technology companies in mainland China doing, and how will that impact the global FinTech industry? We'll also take a deep dive into some of the most innovative technologies, looking beyond the headlines and looking at real world applications and solutions for things like big data, artificial intelligence, distributed ledger, and blockchain technology. And as I mentioned before, networking is one of the main reasons that people attend events, and at Hong Kong FinTech Week, we really want to drive the connections that let you move your business forward and meet the peers that you need to meet. We're doing that this year through a really exciting virtual platform. It allows you to make connections, to book meetings, to have video calls, and to just network as smoothly and efficiently as you do when you're at an event in person. Now, one of our initiatives that I'm super excited about this year is our Global Fast Track program. This is our FinTech B2B matchmaking program that sees you pitching your products and solutions directly to corporates, investors, and regulators in Hong Kong. We are open for applications now. Visit fintechweek.hk/fast track and submit your application under the 8 verticals that you can see on screen. This program is completely free to participate in and can be done 100% online. And I really cannot overstate the benefits that you'll gain from participating in Fast Track, as well as meeting corporates and investors. We also partner up with Hong Kong-based experts and government to support your Hong Kong expansion journey, helping you access landing subsidies of up to 2.6 million USD. And we're also working closely with investors who have committed to invest in companies meeting their portfolio and due diligence requirements of up to 1 million USD. So there really is a lot to gain from taking part in this program, especially if you're considering Hong Kong and Asia as a market for your growth. So now that we've had a look at what's happening in Hong Kong and what we have coming up at Hong Kong FinTech Week, I'd like to dive into our panel discussion. I am honored today to be joined by some really excellent speakers. We have Mr. Calvin Choi, Chairman and CEO of AMTD. As Charles mentioned, AMTD is the strategic partner of FinTech Week this year, and also one of our corporate champions for Fast Track. I also have Mr. King Leung, the head of FinTech at Invest Hong Kong, Mr. Mashir Ahmed, Managing Director at FinStep Asia, and Mr. Lucas Petrikas, the head of Innovation and Data Lab at Hong Kong Exchange and Clearing. Hong Kong Exchange are also a corporate champion of the Fast Track program. So if you apply, you could be pitching to Calvin, Lucas, and their teams in just a few short months. I would like to say a huge thank you to all of our panelists for joining us today. And just to remind everyone that you can pop your questions for our panelists into the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen at any time. So I'm going to kick off today. One of the things that I want to look at the most is, growing and scaling a company. That's going to be what some of our viewers are really interested to learn about today. I'd like to kick off with Lucas, actually, because Hong Kong Exchange has recently been named the most valuable bourse by the Financial Times. Do you see any parallels between this and the growth and strength of fintech in the region?
Absolutely, and thanks for the question, Hannah. If you look at the composition of the public market in Hong Kong, in the last 2 years, it's fundamentally changed. The top 10 traded companies 2 years ago used to be banks and energy companies. Now, 8 of the top 10 are technology companies, whether it's Alibaba or Tencent or JD, Xiaomi, SMIC. The composition of what we call the sort of index and the things that are getting attention have fundamentally changed. And that itself has helped us, as a stock market, really differentiate. And we've had 60 IPOs so far this year. And if you look at the types of companies that are listing, a lot of it is biotech, health tech, especially in the wake of people trying to cope with COVID, but also fintech companies. And I mean, it was publicly announced that Ant Financial, probably the world's largest fintech company, is looking to list in Hong Kong later this year, which is really fascinating for us because in some ways this has leapfrogged over what traditionally used to be sort of the U.S. Traditional global sort of center of gravity for fintech listings. So in many ways, our success reflects what's happening in our broader market with fintech.
Fantastic. And has that growth and that change impacted the work that you do at the Innovation Lab as well? Have you seen more companies, more solutions, more innovation coming through in recent times?
Yeah, absolutely. So the way that we work here is we like to partner with fintechs regardless of where they are in the world. But I would say that compared to, for example, our peers in Europe or the US, there's one big difference. Over in those time zones, you tend to have sort of big established incumbents. And then the fintech partners tend to be sort of smaller, earlier stage startup companies. Here we have that, but we also have the China tech giants. Like Baidu, like Alibaba, like Tencent, who in themselves are huge umbrella incubators for other companies that they've either invested in or partnered with. And I think in the US, you haven't got that dynamic where New York Stock Exchange and Amazon sort of team up on technology, whereas here we do. So the spectrum of partners that we can work with is absolutely phenomenal. And we see that pool growing every day through events like FinTech Week.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Lucas. And coming to Calvin, because AMTD has operations and investments all over the world. You're listed on the New York Stock Exchange, but you're a homegrown Hong Kong company. And for a lot of companies, this kind of global growth is one of the ultimate goals. Can you share with us any challenges that you may have faced along the way, be that regulation, resources, talent, or any other things that you had to deal with on your global journey?
Sure. I think for companies growing outside of the home market, I think it's of course to achieving more diversification or finding areas of new opportunities and growth. But into every new markets or new opportunities, I think you exactly pointed it out right that I think there are several aspects that we focus particularly into. I think one is about talents. So in talents, I think it's about whether you wouldn't be able to bring every talent into a new place or new country, whereas you develop your local businesses. I think ultimately, I believe in what is more not just localization, but I call it globalization. So I think I want to have those local ones embracing more of a regional aspect or growth dimensional, but at the same time, I think with lots of local know-how. So I think how to develop, the local talent, but also with some of the knowledge transfer from outside and to integrate into something, best for your company. I think, of course, it's easier to say, but then to actually doing it. But then I think, we have been investing a lot in this talent. So in the way that, we homegrown in Hong Kong, we built out the FinTech school with Polytechnic University, onward to Singapore together with SMU and NUS and Xiaomi. We built out, there is an XC Digital Finance Leadership Program as an example. Another aspect, I think, is about cultural dynamics or local appetites or interests that I think every countries or places could be different. So I think, and finally, I think it will be licenses. I think you pointed it out. So what are the local regulatory requirements or the particular license, requiring for you to conduct your business? Of course, we all need to conduct businesses, following rules and regulation.
Fantastic. And aside from sort of the challenges that companies have to face, do you have any advice for how they can, generate a bit of buzz or cause a splash when exploring a new market?
I think partnership. I think find the local champion, find the ones that can partner well with each other. What you can bring onto the table, what they can actually offer you. I think we've been establishing lots and lots of partnership. I think basically building out what we call the AMTD ecosystem with the word spider net. So spider net, I call it an ever-growing ecosystem because it's very sticky, like a spider web. So we stick and then we connect and then we partner with more and more people and companies, and ultimately it's about people. I see connectivities or ecosystem play more into not just company to company, but with the people. So I think partnership would be something that creating lots of attention locally, and in fact like how we go out of Hong Kong or from Greater Bay connecting with the ASEAN market for the last few months, we find quite a number of ecosystem partners that we deeply integrate and connect through in Singapore, no matter in terms of Insure Tech company, PolicyPal, no matter in terms of a digital asset platform, CapBridge, or payment company, FormoPay.
Fantastic. I think that's really important. Something that's come up actually time and time again during these global roadshows is the importance of partnerships. And that's something I want to touch on a little bit later. But I would like to come to Mashir now, because Mashir, at FinStep, you're supporting companies to grow and scale in Asia. Are there any particular verticals that you've seen, within the Hong Kong or the Indian FinTech markets that you think will become the priorities and see the most growth over, say, the next 5 years?
Thanks, Hannah. Pleasure to be here and speak to the audience based in India and Middle East. When you're looking at companies who are looking to scale and who are doing well and the trends going forward, right? And I'm going to keep myself narrow to the FinTech field, though biotech, I think, is definitely one space that is growing tremendously. On the FinTech space, there are three main markets from an Indian to a Middle East perspective when you're looking to scale internationally. Indian firms, when it comes to B2B payments, have very strong technology as well as capabilities built using the various technology platforms in India. And I think that is definitely one area that they can look to expand. That would be beneficial working not only with banks, but also providing payment rails, etc. in Southeast Asia. I think that's one market for Indian firms to look at. And East Asia as well, despite facts like, places like Korea, Japan, they may have fast internet, etc., but payments are still evolving in those markets, right? So that's number one. Number two is Insure Tech and / health tech startups who could supplement Insure Tech companies. That's one area where we're seeing good growth, not just locally in India, but overseas as well. With COVID, that's been accelerated. Digitization of the insurance industry, I think, has probably been the most over the last few months in terms of percentages as compared to any of the other financial services sectors. So that's the second space. Number three is wealth tech, though, investment in India, you do have very high, we have very high volumes in our local stock markets. Some of the India's wealth tech startups and robo-advisors have grown quite significantly in the recent past. You have companies like Zerodha who provide zero fees platform, but they've been growing quite a bit. Those companies can explore coming into markets like Hong Kong, where there is a lot of interest, but we do see like the local markets in Hong Kong are dominated by local brokers, and there's a lot of space for companies to come in on the B2B side and augment the business land. So yeah, those will be the three sectors.
Fantastic. And I think it's interesting to note that those three sectors, payments, insurance, and wealth tech, are all key verticals of our Fast Track program this year. There are huge opportunities for growth for companies operating in those spaces. And just to build off that a little bit, Mashir, what do you consider to be Asia's competitive advantage, compared to other regions?
I think we need to be very cognizant of the fact that Asia has 17 jurisdictions, right? Putting it as a homogeneous market is sometimes a big mistake for companies coming in. Also internally in Asia, right? When you're coming in from the Middle East or to Southeast Asia or East Asia or from India to the other parts, one of the mistakes I've seen most people make is not understand the cultural norms. Calvin rightly mentioned that culture is a very, very big important part of how you're engaging, and understanding local business culture and local culture is very important for expansion. So I think for Asia's strength is agility, very, very young population for a majority of the countries who are, 50% are below 30 for a large number of countries in Asia, and very dynamic, very mobile friendly, mobile first economies. So that I think is the biggest strength of Asia, and it's no longer the case of looking at developed economies for newer technology growth. As Lucas was mentioning, you do see significant switch in terms of growth of technologies here. The fact that Ant Financial is worth on its own close to 200 billion, or expected valuation of 200 billion when they do list, as a subsidiary of a half a trillion dollar company, Alibaba, tells you that the growth of fintech is tremendous, and they can just grow being in a limited market or the greater China market. They've grown so well. Once they expand, it's very tremendous. So innovation is being developed locally. In India, there's a term called Jugaad, which is figuring out things for the local markets. And I think Asia is all about how can we fix local problems and serve local needs. And fintech is doing really well in that.
Fantastic, thank you. And maybe King, we could get your perspective on that as well. Asia, but also narrowing the focus a little bit and looking at Hong Kong. Why should fintech companies be considering Hong Kong as a market for their growth?
Well, at the end of the day, when we are looking at international expansion, naturally you want to go to a market in which there's a very rich soil of financial services. So I guess even without looking at the stats and just randomly ask a person, okay, name 3 cities around the world that are rich in the financial services environments. So naturally, people would name, okay, New York City, London, and Hong Kong. So because I think this is just the way it is, that Hong Kong has been built over like decades and generations of hard work by many people in this sector to build it up to what it is today. And as Charles kicked off by sharing about the rich ecosystem. So in a way, when we look at, particularly from a B2B fintech standpoint, so that market in itself is already a great market. So forget about the population of 7 million. That is a great market to begin with. On top of that, the Hong Kong government has already put forward actually $49 billion US dollar of various funding to support, again, from technology adoption to the job creation. So there's just a lot of say government support. And third and last but not least is just the fundraising environments. Again, I don't want to repeat what Charles and Lucas said. It's just an enormous platform to raise money. So you got a market, in terms of clients, then you got a government support, you got the investment, the platform. So I think this is like a holy grail.
Fantastic. And that's actually leads me perfectly into what I wanted to ask next, which is about fundraising, because raising capital is always, a big consideration for companies that are looking to scale and grow. And so Calvin, many fintech companies are looking for funding in Hong Kong and China, and you're very experienced working with companies in mainland China. From your perspective, what makes Chinese investors different from Western VCs? And is there anything that international companies should know or be aware of, before they start approaching investors in China?
No, I think, the world is getting very, globalized right now, or even though there are different geopolitical or uncertainties surrounding the globe, but then I think still that the overall world are getting more connected, especially I think when King talked about the major financial markets. I think over the many years, I think for IPOs in Hong Kong or even globally, we always conduct roadshow onward to US, to London, but also to the Middle East. So, my long years of as an investment banking, person, I've been to Middle East for many, many times. So I think, how we actually see the world, I think in terms of no matter the fundraising opportunity, but, from the buy side and sell side appetite, I think are quite, similar in terms of, I think how we see and look into opportunities. But yet, I think during the pandemic, changes quite a bit of the original norm, or maybe creating some new norm. that we are seeing. I mean, number one is that we see more innovations out of the previous, I think, traditional way that, rounds and rounds of fundraising, from seed round, A round, and onward to the many numbers of rounds. But then now that we are going to see and already seeing lots of, business integration or combination, I think, in between the smaller players or the bigger players, or in terms of a particular startup locally that they find, another internet giant or new economy players coming into the new market, and they roll into play and become one, not only in terms of the businesses, but the talents, or maybe other format of cooperation, players going into a different market, finding the local champion to create joint ventures. And in fact, that's quite similar to actually what we see in the market anyway, that when you see that, like the tech giants coming out to Hong Kong, I think thanks to the Hong Kong government being so innovative that, we already have 8 virtual banks now in Hong Kong, but you see different formats of partnership. Well, us being one of those, I think one of the 8, and we partner with Xiaomi. So I think very much different, ourselves and Xiaomi, IoT tech giant globally, and us, Hong Kong homegrown financial institutions. So these different kinds of combination or consortium, bringing the best of not just both worlds, but many worlds. You'll see many more happening. And then I think finally some innovative approach. You see different kinds, in the market. We also invented some little kind that I think, most recently we play this, what we call the fusion in strategy, that we've been building our overall digital platform, that we find the best entrepreneurs or talents that we want to support and groom. Of course, the company, the businesses that they've been building, we want to anchor, we want to help them to grow further. So in the fusion in strategy is basically using some of our shares to do partial share swap and partial cash. Sounds simple, but in fact it's a lot complicated, because then, all their shareholders on a pro rata basis for the target becoming also our shareholders, and we become kind of interest aligned in between each other. And when they become part of us, I think we see more commonalities in terms of the values, proposition, and also how we grow the company. And finally, when we grow further that company, we might spin them off for listing. And I think that will be onward to Lucas' domain, right? And more listing, deriving more listing coming up. So the AMTD digital model now, the fusion in strategy, is something that I'm working on and be one of the key focuses of AMTD so far. But that also tells you, Hannah, the new norm I think has been creating a more innovative approach, more exciting deal specifics, I think, in the fintech industry.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. And yeah, maybe we'll come to Lucas next to maybe follow up on that a little bit. Maybe you can talk a little bit about what companies should know when looking for a public offering in Hong Kong. Is there a perfect time to do it? Let's get your thoughts on that.
Yeah, well, as people say, it's always a fool's errand to try to time the market. But I mean, the IPO story here in Hong Kong has been, one of the great counter narratives to the sort of the COVID phenomenon that has affected capital raising everywhere. If anything, we've seen more IPOs in the last 18 months than at any point in our history. And recently there was one week where we had 17 listings in a week. And sometimes, even though we now do them on a virtual stage and you ring the virtual gong, so we don't physically run out of space, but the momentum is certainly there. I think there's something behind that. As King was alluding, Hong Kong is one of these places where East and West capital play together. It's the only such place where such a depth of capital from both East and West mingle. And it's not just VC and private equity. It's a lot of family offices. It's a lot of high net worth individuals, and it's a lot of angels, the kind of angels that are really sort of archangels. They have a lot of money to invest. So if you're looking to raise funds, I mean, you have to come here. Because the pool of capital that you can access, whether you're early stage or late stage private, or indeed, as we keep proving, going public, is very, very difficult to match. And especially if your business has a nexus in the Asian time zone, you're always probably going to get a better valuation at some point for your shares over here. And I'm sure that one day, Calvin will also bring back his company here as well.
Thank you, Lucas. Maybe I can come to Mashir next, actually, moving away from public and looking a bit more at the private investment, because at FinStep, you offer VC as a service, helping corporates to build out their venture capital activity and engaging with startups. Have you seen any particular trends, with the corporates that are looking to invest in FinTech startups that you work with?
Right. I think what's happened in the last few years is initially banks were quite not looking at fintech as an option too much. They were looking to build things on their own. They looked at fintech as a competition. But in the recent past, there is a real realization and a push towards more partnerships in line with what Calvin was talking about with the SpiderNet, etc., but also to align businesses and services in some cases. And building off that, the corporate VCs are also looking at strategic investments where the fintech aligns very well with their business models, right? Or fills gaps that they don't have. One trend that I've started seeing is initially these CVCs were largely focused or based out of either the Silicon Valley or London. Like, for example, HSBC's main VC is based out of Silicon Valley for their fintech investments. But now you're seeing companies actually set up more teams on the ground in Asia. So they are looking at more deals in Asia, looking at more fintechs in Asia with the Asian context. So that is becoming very strong. So that's one trend we're definitely seeing. One point to keep in mind when we look at corporate VCs and fintechs who can get in there is there are two types I feel that corporate VCs are looking at. One would be the pure tech-focused company. So you could be building something using very interesting machine learning models, right? And that's your IP, which is very strong. Or it could be a blockchain-based solution. That's something that I see a lot of VCs being interested, irrespective of which field you're in, because that's technology that they find interesting. Secondly is looking at slightly mature companies. Early stage will still be a problem. I think companies who are near the Series B side are something that is where a lot of interest comes in from CVCs. They don't mind partnering with family offices from time to time, but not maybe other corporates. But that's a space you can see over the last year. I think the M&A activity in fintech has increased tremendously. Some of the major players, including the likes of Visa, have been doing a lot of acquisitions, and that is aligned with what people want to build out. I mean, Calvin's spoken about PolicyPal and the others that they have invested or acquired, and that's all strategically being built out in different areas that the banks are looking to expand. So this is one other element is for the mature fintechs, there is an opportunity to be acquired or for mergers, depending on their ability to fill the gap that the corporates may not have.
Brilliant, thank you. And you mentioned again there partnerships. So let's pick up on that. So we've already mentioned a few times today the AMTD SpiderNet. Calvin, maybe you could give us a little bit more information on the SpiderNet, but also some advice, or what is the right strategy when companies are looking to build these kind of partnership networks?
Sure, I think the way that when I first built our AMTD since 2015, 2016, I wasn't interested to just build a traditional financial services company or any particular singular line of businesses. I've been long years with investment banking, so just being working another or creating another investment bank, just chasing another IPO, bringing more deals to Lucas, right? It's not something that I want to just hold it out to build a platform of that kind. So what I want actually is something more sticky, more naturally, that actually I can service the client over an ecosystem proprietary of our own. Because I think in the whole financial services field, I think especially into fintech, you can see many very smaller subverticals. So of course you cannot be everyone. You cannot be anyone just covering everything. So I think the model is pretty much like Avengers. That if I'm kind of like a Nick Fury person, then how I can find a superhero for each of the superpower. So maybe I only want the wind power, the fire power, or whichever power I want, right? Then on an overall basis, then I pull up the different best partners, I think in the particular field, and then we connect, we collaborate, we build something more like an aggregator. Then I think we provide more holistic solution to our end customer. So I think the overall basis or the end goal is to be more sticky, with our client. So I think I used to say that, when the ecosystem, we call it the spider net. I think, Spider-Man, think of all of our staff and people working within the organization. So what we ultimately want to achieve is be very sticky with every client. Through the spider web, the interconnectivity ultimately is promoting more sustainability. But then through the web, we don't give out poison, right? We give out vitamin, we give out, support, we give out values, and creating values, otherwise in areas might be in the non-core area of a particular client, and how to create it to become the core out of the non-core. So this is always what I've been, talking about, that, we create values, but not, typically or originally, within your core, so that we bundle, we collaborate, we combine, and when we create. So I think the ecosystem engine, or the seeing ourselves, not anymore as an investment banker, even though we have investment banking within our businesses, we being one of the largest independent investment bank across Asia. But then, from all of our role, we are not interested into each of this particular component. We are interested to see all of ourselves as an ecosystem builder. So we are building the ecosystem day to day. So very interesting, when we have all the, participant audience, I think online, we just recently strike a very good, happy cooperation, I think, with Global Linker. It's from connecting India to Singapore and the rest of Asia, but building this SME community, and with immense connectivity. So how that we partner with each other to find more holistic power solution for the SME. So I think, now that I think through the partnership, I'm seeing more values. I think our bit is to creating more values power, to serve otherwise underserved. Because otherwise, just by a single platform or single hand, I think it might not commercially, rationalizing. But then otherwise, if we combine the different resources together, then it makes sense. And also out of the overall community, I think it will creating, what we see as the essence, supporting the supporters and enabling the enabler. So through that, I think hopefully we can achieve a better world, a greater society.
Fantastic. So it's about, nourishing partnerships, creating value, collaborating together. Thank you, Calvin. Lucas, Hong Kong Exchange also has some key partnerships, I know with TNS, MSCI. How important have they been for HKEX, and how have they contributed to your growth strategy or your offering to your partners and consumers?
Yeah, in the exchange world, partnerships are truly everything, and whether it's something that's familiar to most people, like Hang Seng Index, for example, is associated with Hong Kong, and Hang Seng is a company that we partner with to deliver that to the market. But in recent years, we've been quite active. We partner with Tencent on a virtual bank. Hong Kong's one of the first cities to introduce a sort of fully virtual banking regime in the last couple of years, which has been amazing to watch because so many entrants have come in and set up. We also partner with tech giants like Ping An on doing technology projects, and all these companies are based in cities that are not Hong Kong, and I think COVID has really helped break down borders, if you will, and teach us to work in a new way. But also looking sort of further down the chain, in the last year, I would say we've done 5 or 6 successful fintech partnerships where we've come at it not as sort of innovation theater, but really doing a project together where we use someone else's technology and use our brand to either make operations of the market here in Hong Kong more efficient, or to provide some kind of new service to people who come and use our capital markets, whether that's investors or issuers. And oftentimes people don't even know about it because it's something we provide in the background invisibly, and we don't hype it up too much. But our door is very, very open to working with fintechs. And actually, in the last 2 years, in FinTech Week has been where we met some people that our partnerships have become really productive with. So I can't wait for this year.
Fantastic. And I'll just mention once again that Lucas and his team will be taking part in Fast Track. They are championing the capital markets vertical. So get in touch, apply online if you are interested to try and collaborate there. Right, I'm getting questions in from the audience now, so I'm going to start throwing these out to our panelists. And King, this one is for you. What are the cultural differences and similarities that we see between the Middle East, India, and Hong Kong? And do you have any advice for companies to handle that?
Well, first of all, when I guess Moshia can attest to this, that in a way, Hong Kong is a welcoming place. Now, we are not huge in terms of the size of the community. But then I think for people who are operating in Hong Kong, the FinTech ecosystem, there's just a lot of collaboration. And as such, I think for whether or not the companies is from Middle East or India, at the end of the day, I think just the environment, Hong Kong environment, is just so international. So as a result, I just don't see that there's a lot of so-called cultural barrier. And also just simply because of the culture in Hong Kong being much more pragmatic. So that's why when it comes to doing business, I think people are just being rational and just get things done. So this sort of pragmatism is really kind of like a hallmark of the Hong Kong culture that I believe would be quite embracing and universal for folks from all around the world, not just Middle East and India.
Fantastic. Thank you, King. Right, I've had a question in from Mashia. So e-commerce is growing quickly in the Middle East, like Amazon, Souk, Noon. Compared to East Asia or ASEAN, what are their pain points and how could FinTech help with that?
Sorry, just unmuting myself. I guess when we're looking at the Middle East market, you're right, there's Souk, Noon, and you have a few others who are starting to emerge. One point that everybody needs to realize that the Middle East is still very, very young. I think even younger than some other parts of Asia. The numbers, I mean, 70% below 30 maybe, very young population, and they are savvy. However, traditionally, a lot of people like going to the souks themselves, right? Going physically and shopping was a trend, and malls, etc., are not just a means of going for shopping, but they're also, in a way, a place to go relax, right? Air conditioning is always there in the malls, and you can't go outdoors, so you go into the malls and you shop. So that is one of the things that has always been there. But in today's world, I think the e-commerce players need to realize that you can't just say, hey, we're selling things digitally, so come buy from us. That's not going to be a strong enough value proposition. It has to be more than that. I think using approach of some of the tech fins in terms of offering additional services along with e-commerce. I think that's one of the key elements to look at it. Not approach it in the sense of saying we are selling you something, but look at what does the market need. Is there a need for companies just to, I mean, are the public just looking to buy goods online, or are they looking for more? I mean, deals and discounts is standard. There's nothing to change, but trying to figure out the end customer's actual needs and focusing on those would be better. I think niche e-commerce players will do better in the longer run because more people are going to likely to go for specific things that they can't find locally. A second thing is to try to source more international goods as well, and ability to do that. We have a couple of players in Asia and Hong Kong in particular who facilitate the same from international markets, but at not very low cost, at not very high cost. So the two, I mean, nobody is really in a rush for a same-day delivery anymore, I feel, in e-commerce. So it's more about, can you get what they need within a couple of days if possible? So yeah.
Fantastic. So diversifying the products that are available for more people. Brilliant. Right. I've had one in for Lucas. So India topped China in Q1 2020 for FinTech funding. Will we see more Hong Kong companies working with Indian companies?
Yeah, I think so. And not just Hong Kong companies, but China companies in general coming out through Hong Kong, using it as a stepping stone to expand into India and to expand into the Middle East. I mean, I think we all know that India hasn't always necessarily been the easiest market for foreign companies to get into and gain market share quickly, but there have been a lot of success stories and vice versa. And I would say we're seeing more of that in the last sort of 6 or so months. I mean, we have been approached by quite an interesting range of sort of startups coming out of India, including people operating sort of private markets, peer-to-peer sort of funding for pre-IPO companies, people doing robo-advisory, wealth tech, some of whom have set up headquarters and hired people in Hong Kong. So that's been fascinating to see. And I will say, sort of in terms of timing, this question is, are we going to see more of it now? I think Hong Kong is going through a sort of a renaissance in terms of fintech. I mean, the first wave here was in the late 90s when Hong Kong was the first jurisdiction in the world to issue smart identity cards, the second jurisdiction in the world to issue contactless payment, our Octopus card, and we all still carry these things in our wallet. And then, let's be real, for 2 decades, nothing much happened. And then in 2017-18, we saw the second wave coming. We saw virtual banking being introduced. We saw open API for banks, which has led to a big sort of renaissance in fintech. We've seen faster payments. We've seen listing reform make it easier for tech companies to raise money. We've seen new structures to setting up an investment fund here. And all these things, I think the second wave, this renaissance is now is the right time. So absolutely is my answer. You're going to see a lot more of this kind of collaboration.
Fantastic, thank you. Calvin, I've had a question for you. As a Hong Kong company planning to expand in Asia, what role can the Middle East and India play, and what are the strategic benefits there?
Sure. So when for a company like AMTD, from Hong Kong, when we eyeing, to expand regionally, and ultimately, I think it's not just about, from Hong Kong to another place, or to covering the whole of Asia, or ultimately, I think it's about connectivity, looking onward to the world. So I think the connectivity, from the different regions, I think create more areas of growth and opportunities, of course, to finding different companies, of a common interest, to partner, to combine, and also creating more values. And when I look into the Middle East and also places, countries like India, I think I see as three important elements, right? One is markets. I think the two places are huge market. I think look into India, I think it's a huge place. I think not only that for companies only within India, but even for global companies, for companies even from China. So look into our partner, Xiaomi. They have been very active in India. So for their mobile handset as a brand, they are #1 in India. So huge opportunity for players outside going into India. I think same thing, I think, a significant amount of booming for the financial services sector. So I could tell you right here, and also to all the audience, I think, we are very interested and bullish about, the India financial services industry. And likewise, I think for Middle East, I think, we talk about market, we talk about funding, and the third item we think of, for markets like such, I think it's a brilliant minds and also people. Then over to funding, I think it's just no doubt, right? I think for Middle East, of course, it's a huge funding place. I think, but opportunities also look into, how we match the right funding pocket with the right opportunity. So ultimately, it's global asset allocation, diversification, and not only from Middle East, how we going into that, but also from Middle East connecting the flows back into Asia, back into Hong Kong. And finally, I think for talents, I think just a few weeks ago, more than a month ago, we signed a strategic MOU with the Singapore Exchange. What we actually looking to is actually from Hong Kong, connecting with ASEAN, and we mentioned also Middle East within the cooperation. I think ultimately we are trying to create more connectivity in between the different major markets to train the right talents, I think, for the capital market space. There may not be the talents same as now and also for before. We see actually lots of technology, and when you mentioned about distributed technology, how they actually been applying blockchain into the distribution context, or even into custody, or into different kinds of supporting through the whole value chain for capital markets. But I think ultimately, I think not only the technology, but also the situation context for the particular opportunities, but really it's about the talent. So when we talk about that, we want to build ultimately AMTD investment banking university. Hopefully that we could bring the different talents, cultivating, grooming, developing, these talents, but also connecting all the talents together and have the right talent support for more longer term sustainable development.
Fantastic. So talent is key and connectivity is key. Right, I have a question for King that I think will be relevant for a lot of our viewers today. Can you give us some ideas on the support for companies from the Middle East who want to establish themselves in Hong Kong? What are the main benefits, the funding available, and can you give us some information on getting residency in Hong Kong as well?
Okay, sure. Thanks, Hannah. Now, essentially, we have recently updated the mapping of various government funding. So it is literally end-to-end, from the business setup, to the R&D, because obviously a lot of times you have to do some localization, development work, in which there's some subsidies as well. And then there's the, I would say, the hiring aspect, that the government would also provide subsidies for you to hire the local talents, or even provide the subsidies to the talents you have to pay for by, let's say, moving that person from Middle East to work in Hong Kong. Then there's also subsidies. The various subsidies, essentially what I'm trying to get at is there's just so many of them. So from end to end, from setting up to including the selling. So there's another subsidy that would cover the POC with the major corporate clients. And then moving on, there's also subsidy for expanding overseas. So from using Hong Kong as a launch pad to, let's say, mainland China or the other parts of Southeast Asia. So actually, when we look at this, to be honest, we got a bit dizzy. There's just so many of them. And we decided to just add up all the available subsidies, and we came up with a number of around 2.6 million US per company, assuming that you apply for every single one and you got proof for every single one support scheme. So 2.6 million US is a good sum to get started. Now, in terms of the question about the residency, essentially there's just two key points. Now, one is that there are the various programs, and one of them in particular is called TechTAS. So the TECHTAS is basically a fast track process program in which we can help to fast track the visa application for tech talents. So you may want, let's say you have a top-notch tech talents who's a tech leader, to want to send him over to Hong Kong to build out the Asian operation. Then I think the visa application for the tech talents can be fast tracked using this program. So then we can also apply visas for other folks as well. Now, and once you start working in Hong Kong, then you just have to stay in Hong Kong for 7 years to be eligible to become a Hong Kong resident. So it's a pretty straightforward process.
Fantastic. So an abundance of support available. And if you want any more information on any of the things that King's mentioned, you can always get in touch with Invest Hong Kong directly, and they are here to support. Right, I've had another question come in for Lucas. What strategies can Hong Kong use to retain its strong position in capital markets in the near future?
Yeah, I think this is a very good question. In capital markets, I would say there's a couple of sort of structural megatrends taking place. One is what we've talked about a lot in the past hour, which is the sort of sectoral rotation into new tech, into new economy companies, and that has required us to revisit our listing regime in the last couple of years, and something we've especially done well with biotech, and now we're starting to do with fintech, and and financials listing could be that watershed moment for us. In terms of the way that these companies are governed, and things like weighted voting rights, sometimes held by corporate, sometimes individuals, things like sometimes having secondary listing somewhere else. A lot of these things are kind of, or even doing a direct listing where you do an IPO without actually raising money, which Spotify and Slack have done in the States. All of these things are, in some ways a little bit new for an exchange, right? So for us, it's incumbent to keep up and to make sure that we're always one step ahead of those innovations, because ultimately our whole purpose is to provide a venue for the people with the good ideas and the people with the money to meet each other and to have that exchange. I think the other sort of large mega trend we're seeing is this inflow of Chinese capital deposits, wealth that has been locked up in mainland China for many years. Probably the world's last remaining frontier in terms of the huge untapped capital base that hasn't yet reached international markets in the way that, let's say, sort of Norwegian or Middle Eastern sovereign wealth funds have. That pool of money, we think, is going to fundamentally change, composition of global capital markets, and it's probably going to do it through Hong Kong, and that has started already. And I think this is a great time to be raising money and to be diversifying your investors in this market. And that trend is, is a reason that we feel fortunate to be responsible for running a market in a city where these two pools of capital can interact.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Right. We are starting to run out of time here. So I would like to get our panelists' final thoughts and your one top tip for companies looking to expand into the Hong Kong market. What would you advise them? Let's go with Mashir first.
Thank you, Hannah. I think for the companies who are looking to expand into Hong Kong, 3 things to keep in mind. You're entering a very competitive market. It is, as King it's the top 3 financial center in the world. So things aren't going to come easy, but it also means there's a lot of opportunity if you have the right business model. So number 1. Number 2, look at Hong Kong as the right springboard for not only entering East Asia, but the access it provides to rest of Asia, right? That's one major element of the Hong Kong market. And number 3 is Hong Kong's technology talent is not as well recognized as it should be. We actually have some very strong artificial intelligence talent and other talent that is available. And the business talent in Hong Kong is beyond any other city, right? It's very, very competitive, very, very mature and experienced. And that's something that you can leverage off by coming in here. So those are 3 things from my side.
Fantastic. Thank you, Michelle. And Calvin, how about you?
I want to say 4 suggestions, right? 4 points. One is that come to join the Hong Kong FinTech Week. Of course, I think that you will find many partners, new friends, and also opportunities. Number 2, I think is go join Mashia's virtual FinTech fair. I think it's also very, very much excited, full of excited speakers. And number 3 is talk to King, right? Talk to our Invest Hong Kong, right? There are lots of helps that they can provide and pinpoint you to the right people, the right governmental departments and support. And finally, join AMTD SpiderNet and contact me.
Fantastic. Thank you, Calvin. Lucas, how about you?
Yeah, I always say to sort of startups that are trying to come into the market that isn't their home market, KYC, know your context, right? Is the problem that you're trying to solve really a problem over here in the same way that it might be in your home market? Number 1. And number 2 is anyone else already trying to do it? What's the competition away from home look like? Are the people that you're pitching your idea to, have they heard it 50 times before? So you make sure you've done your homework. I think these are universal tips, but especially when you're attending one of these cross-border fintech events, doing your homework really, really goes a long way.
Fantastic. And King, finally, your thoughts.
Well, I guess first of all, thanks to Calvin and Mashia and Lucas for saying all the things that I meant to say. So I guess the one thing I want to add, without repeating what the previous speakers shared, is that now when we talk about the financial services, the enormous strength and richness, there's another segment within the Hong Kong economy that is equally important, that sometimes we have not been giving them as much credit as we should, and that is the professional services sector in Hong Kong. Because obviously, when we look at just the way that the sector is structured, there are just so many experts, right? I mean, the law firms, the accountancies, and of course, the consulting firms, and they have the international experience, not only in general business consulting, but also in the regulatory, advisory, because after all, Hong Kong is really the regional headquarters for a lot of the large corporations. So there are decades of really sort of hardcore knowledge in which is all here in this city. So that's why if you do have some doubts about whether or not your strategy is right, I mean, there's just a lot of professional help they can tap into before you make a big bets into the Hong Kong market, subsequently expanding overseas.
Brilliant, thank you. So to sum up, you should do your homework, you should engage with events, you should engage with professionals who can give you advice, and you shouldn't overlook the homegrown talent base that Hong Kong has. Thank you. I want to say a huge thank you to all of our speakers for joining us today, for sharing your insights and for fielding our questions. And a big thank you to everyone who's joined us online for the Global Roadshow series. And I hope that we will see you all online 2nd to 6th of November for Hong Kong FinTech Week this year as well. Thank you, everyone, and have a great rest of the day. Goodbye.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye.